The morning after I sold my business, I woke up and the very first thought in my head was two words: now what? I want to talk about those two words today because I think they're the most important two words a man can deal with before he retires. Now what? And here's the whole point of what I'm going to tell you. You do not want to be asking that question for the first time the morning after, the way I did. You want to have the answer in your pocket before you ever walk out the door. Look, everybody plans the leaving, the number, the date, the party. Nobody plans the landing. And the landing is a question, and the question is, now what? And if you don't have an answer ready, that question can swallow a man whole. I've watched it happen to better men than me. It nearly happened to me. So I'm going to make the case for why you've got to find your now what before you retire, not after, and what it actually is, because it's not what most folks think. And Barbara would tell you I learned every bit of this the hard way, so consider me the cautionary tale. Let me take you back to that morning. I'd built the business for the better part of 30 years, sold it at 62 for a number that would have made the broke kid I used to be fall right over. I shook the hands, the check cleared, I drove home a winner, did everything right. And the next morning I woke up at 5:30, same as always, body didn't know I'd retired. And I laid there and there was nothing, no problem to solve, no call to make, no fire to put out. For 30 years I'd woken up with a head full of what needs doing, and that morning the well was just dry. Now what? And I didn't have a single answer. I laid in that bed feeling like a racehorse standing in a stall with the gate wide open and nowhere to run. That's the thing nobody warns the achievers about. And if you're watching this, I suspect you're one of them. And here's the strange part. I'd done this before in a way, and I should have known better. When I went broke at 31, and I've told you about that, real broke, watched them tow my car out of the driveway, I had a now what then too. But back then, necessity handed it to me. The answer to now what was obvious. Now you go claw your way back because the rent's due. I didn't have to find a reason to get up. The reason was banging on the door. That's what fooled me at 62. I figured the drive to get up would just always be there because it always had been. But it was never really mine. It was on loan from necessity. And the day I had more money than I'd ever need, necessity packed up and left, and took my now what with it. That's the trap of doing well. Success quietly fires the very thing that got you out of bed and doesn't tell you it's gone until the morning you reach for it, and it isn't there. So let me make the case. 4 reasons you've got to find your now what before you go, not after. Then I'll tell you what mine turned out to be. So here's the first reason you need your now what before you go. Because the day after is too late to start looking. And I'll tell you who this hits hardest. The more successful you were, the worse that empty morning is. Sounds backwards, doesn't it? You'd think the guy who won would land the softest. He doesn't. Because the bigger the thing you built, the bigger the hole when it's gone. And the further the fall from being the man everybody needed to being a man with an empty calendar. The fellas who struggle most with retirement aren't the ones who hated their work. They're the ones who were great at it. Keep that in mind if you've had a good run. You've got more to replace, not less. Here's what people get wrong. They think, I'll retire, I'll rest up, and then I'll figure out what's next. Sounds reasonable. It's a trap. Because the momentum you've got while you're still working, that's the most valuable thing you own, and you don't even know it. You're sharp. You're connected. You're in the habit of getting up and going after something. The day you retire, all that starts draining out of you, slow, and you don't notice it going. And the longer you sit with no now what, the harder it gets to start one, because the muscle you'd use to start it is the very muscle that's going soft. I drifted for almost a year, and I want to be honest about what drifting actually looks like, because it doesn't look dramatic. It looks like a guy in good shape, nice house, plenty of money, sleeping in a little later each week, reading the paper a little longer, taking a nap he didn't used to take, saying, "I'll get to that," about things he never gets to. Nobody looking at me would have said anything was wrong, but I could feel myself getting smaller and slower, a little every month, and I couldn't seem to stop it. Every month I drifted, it got harder to do anything about it, not easier. Resting doesn't recharge you for the next thing. Resting with no next thing just teaches you how to rest. That's the part I didn't understand. I thought I was recovering. I was actually rusting. You've got to find the next thing while you've still got the engine warm, because a cold engine is a whole lot harder to turn over. The second reason, your drive does not retire when you do. This is the one nobody tells the successful men. You spent 40 years building up this engine, the drive, the hunger, the need to be working towards something. You think you're going to retire and that engine just shuts off politely. It doesn't. It keeps running. And an engine running with nothing to pull, it doesn't idle quiet. It starts tearing things up. Mine turned on my family for a while. I started managing Barbara's day like it was a business that needed optimizing. I'd ask her what her plan was for the afternoon, like she needed to file a report. I reorganized the pantry, twice. I started having opinions about how she loaded the dishwasher, a woman who'd been loading it fine for 40 years without my supervision. The drive had nowhere to go, so it went looking for problems, and when it couldn't find real ones, it manufactured them. And Barbara would say, she put it perfectly, the way she does. She said, "Alan, you need a job. Not for the money, for me. Go point that thing at something that isn't us." She was right. The drive needs a target. If you don't give it one, it'll pick one. And it'll usually pick the people you love because they're standing closest. A man with a powerful engine and nothing to pull is dangerous to be married to. I know because I was one for about a year, and I'm lucky she's patient. The third reason, a now what is not a hobby. And this is where a lot of fellas go wrong. Everybody says get a hobby, play golf, take up fishing. And look, those are fine. I like a round of golf. But a hobby is something you do to pass the time. A now what is something that pulls you out of bed. There's a world of difference. A hobby fills a day. A now what gives the day a point. For a man who spent his whole life building things that mattered, who had people depending on him, who solved real problems, golf every day is going to feel like a slow way to disappear. I tried it. 4 months of golf and lunch, and I felt myself shrinking. Because there was no stakes in it. Nothing depended on me. Nobody needed what I knew. And don't get me wrong, the golf was pleasant. That's almost the problem. It was pleasant the way a long nap is pleasant, and you can't build a life out of long naps. By the back nine, I'd catch myself checking my phone, hoping somebody needed something, anything. That's a man who's bored to his bones and won't admit it. A now what has to have a little weight to it, a little something riding on it, or a serious man will see right through it and feel emptier than before. The achievers among us, we don't want ease. We thought we did. But hand us pure ease and we start to come apart. We want to matter. That's a different thing entirely, and golf can't give it to you. The fourth reason, and this is the good news, you can test drive your now what while you're still working, and you should. This is the part I wish somebody'd told me. You don't have to leap into the unknown. While you've still got the job, you can start dipping a toe into what's next. Mentor somebody, sit on a board, get involved in a cause, help a young person starting a business, try things on the side, while the paycheck's still covering you, and see what actually pulls you, because you won't know until you try a few. Most of what you try won't stick. That's fine. That's the point. You're not supposed to know your now what by sitting in a chair thinking about it. You find it by doing things, and most of them being wrong, until one of them grabs you and won't let go. Think about how you found your career or your business the first time around. You didn't figure it out in your head and then go execute the plan. You stumbled into it, tried things, failed at some, and slowly it took shape. Finding your now what is the same. It's not a decision, it's a search. And a search takes time. And time is the one thing you've got plenty of while you're still working and the paycheck's still landing. So use it. Run the search while you're employed, on nights and weekends like a side project. Treat it like the most important project you've got, because it is. You're not just filling time. You're hunting for the reason that's going to carry the back third of your life. But you've got to start the trying before you retire, so that by the time you walk out the door, you already know which direction to walk. So let me tell you what mine turned out to be, because it surprised me. After about a year of drifting and driving my wife up the wall, I got asked to help a young fellow with his business. Kid had a good idea and no clue how to run it. And I sat down with him for an afternoon, and something woke up in me that had been asleep since the day I sold my company. I knew things this kid needed, 30 years of hard lessons, and they were just sitting in my head doing nothing. And here was somebody who could actually use them. That was it. That was my now what. I mentor now 3, 4 young business owners at a time. I sit with them. I look at their numbers. I tell them the hard things their friends won't. I talk them off the ledge when they want to quit. Everything I spent 30 years learning, the wins and the bankruptcies both, all of it goes to good use now instead of just gathering dust in an old man's head. I'm not getting paid, and I don't need to be. What I'm getting is the thing I actually missed, which was never the money. It was being needed, being in the game, having my drive pointed at something real. There's a kid I'm working with right now whose company just turned its first profit, and I felt that the way I used to feel my own wins, maybe more, because this time it wasn't even about me, and that turns out to be better. I found a new place to put the engine, and the day I found it, I stopped being a problem to live with and started being myself again. Ask Barbara. She'll confirm the dates. The pantry's a disaster again, by the way, because I'm too busy to reorganize it, and she could not be happier about that. So here's where I've landed. Retirement isn't an ending you coast into. For a man who built something, it's the hardest pivot of his life, and you don't pivot well without knowing where you're pivoting to. Now what is not a question you want to meet for the first time in your pajamas the morning after. It's a question you answer in advance, on purpose, while you've still got the strength and the sharpness and the connections to do something about the answer. The leaving is easy. Anybody can leave. The now what is the whole game. And the men who do retirement well, everyone I know, didn't retire from a job. They retired toward a next thing they'd already found. They just changed what they were building. They never stopped building. And your now what doesn't have to be big or impressive, by the way. I want to be clear about that, because some fella's listening and thinking he needs to go start a foundation. No. Mine's just sitting with a few young people and sharing what I know. For another man, it's woodworking he sells at the market, or coaching a kids' team, or finally building the thing in the garage he always meant to build, or being the grandfather who actually shows up. The size doesn't matter. What matters is it pulls you out of bed and it's got a little weight to it, and somebody somewhere is a little better off because you did it. That's a now what. That's all it has to be. Let me leave you with this. The most dangerous day of a successful man's life might be the day he finally gets everything he worked for and realizes he has no idea what to do with it. I've been broke and I've been rich, and I'm telling you that empty morning was scarier than being broke ever was. Because broke, at least you know exactly what to do. Go make money. But standing in a finished life with a running engine and no target, that's a special kind of lost. Don't let that be your first morning. Find your now what first. Walk out the door already running towards something, and that morning never has to come at all. I think about that broke kid at the window sometimes, the one who watched them tow his car. And here's the funny thing. That kid was miserable, but that kid knew exactly what to do with his day. He had a fire under him. What I learned at 62 is that a man can lose that fire not by failing, but by winning. And that nobody warns you about that direction of it. They warn you about losing. Nobody warns you about what happens when you finally got nothing left to chase. That's the one that needs a plan. Let me ask you something, and I want real answers. If you're not retired yet, what's your now what going to be? Have you even thought about it, or is the whole plan just stop working and figure the rest out later? Be honest down in the comments, because figure it out later is exactly the plan that nearly sank me. And if you're already retired and you found yours, tell us what it is. Somebody reading needs the idea. And if this hit home, do me a favor and hit that like button. There's a lot of hard-charging folks out there about to walk off a cliff they can't see. And the more this gets around, the more of them might find their now what before they need it instead of after. And if you've got a friend who's all set to retire and has no idea what comes next, send him this. Today, not after. If you want to stick around, go ahead and subscribe. I'm just a guy who found his now what a year too late, telling you how to find yours on time. All right, that's enough out of me. Now go figure out your now what. Start today. You'll thank yourself the morning after.